This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by former world champion Carl Frampton here in London. Carl, always a pleasure. Busy day for you. We just saw you just filmed the face-off there with Alexander Usyk, Daniel Dubois. No, you don't want to give too much away, but what did you make of what they had to say?
It was really good. Look, at all them sort of things, I still feel a wee bit uncomfortable doing face-offs and sitting and trying to be the kind of... Johnny Nelson's very good at it, isn't he? But I'm not. I don't think I'm Johnny Nelson, so it's a difficult one, especially when you've got Usyk having to have his stuff translated, and Usyk's trying to be funny in one hand, and Daniel Dubois is very serious in the other hand and giving short answers. But it was good. It was good. Hopefully, someone can work their magic in the editing room and make it look like I've done a good job.
I'm sure you don't need to talk yourself down there, Carl, but heading into this fight, a lot of people seem to have just kind of written Daniel off before he stepped between the ropes. Do you understand why? Do you disagree with that?
I understand why, yes, but and to be honest, me going into this, coming to here today, like I had a strong favourite in the fight, and that was Usyk. But I think you know, call me gullible or whatever you want to call me, but just listening to Don Charles, listening to Daniel Dubois, listening to Frank Warren, and Frank kind of broke it down by saying, like, look at what Usyk has done at heavyweight. He's had a fight against Tim Witherspoon, which was underwhelming. He had a fight against Derek Chisora, which I think he won the fight, but there's people trying to make an argument that he didn't win the fight. And then he's had the 2 fights against AJ, and they're kind of like, what AJ did we get in them fights? So this could be his toughest fight at heavyweight so far, genuinely. So maybe I'm being sucked in by the promoter talk and the confidence, but it doesn't seem like it's fake confidence from them guys. I still have Usyk as the favourite, but there was just something from Dubois and his team today that makes me believe a wee bit more.
You're not becoming a company man now, Carl.
No, genuinely, I'm not. And look, I'll always be honest and say it how it is. As I've said, I do have a strong favourite in the fight, and that is Usyk. But just from speaking to the people today, it's kind of not as weighed. It's not going to be as much as a shock as I thought it was going to be if Daniel Dubois wins.
One point that I've raised and I've asked people about is naturally Daniel's the bigger man, and going into the AJ and Usyk fights, people were saying if AJ's to have success, he needs to use those physical advantages. Didn't maybe do as much as what people would have thought he would have done. Are you more confident that maybe Daniel will use those physical advantages, impose himself on Alexander more so?
Yeah, I think he'll have to. He'll look at AJ's performances and see that it wasn't working. And to be honest, excuse me, Daniel is he's not this. He was kind of similar to the old AJ, that, you know, the kind of seek and destroy AJ that we haven't seen in a number of fights. And I think AJ's just kind of stuck in the middle of 2 styles at the minute. He needs to apply pressure. He needs to be. He can't just continually walk into shots though. Usyk's not someone who's going to knock him out with a single shot, I don't think. But he will be accurate and he will hit him often enough that it would start to hurt. So he needs to apply a lot of pressure. He needs to, when he's close, he needs to really impose his strength as well. And I think teaming up with Don Charles is something that may work in his favour. Don Charles is a very, very good coach. He was there with Chisora. And Don Charles he was a former heavyweight fighter himself. He knows how to prepare heavyweights for heavyweight title fights. And that's not me having to dig at anyone. I just think this is a good matchup. Him and Don Charles. So yeah, he needs to be aggressive in the fight. Not get frustrated as well. That's important because Usyk is someone who could frustrate anybody. You know, when you're throwing shots and they're hitting thin air, it would be very easy to be frustrated. I think it's important for Daniel to realise that he may be losing rounds, but as long as he's on his feet, he's in the fight, because he does have he's a big puncher.
Let's just stick with the heavyweight division and move forwards. We saw Fury-Ngannou announced the other day. It wasn't a fight everybody, certainly in the boxing fraternity, wanted, but it's the one we're getting now. What was your take when you saw that news?
Look, you know, I'm a boxing purist, and I love boxing. it's a fight that'll make both guys a lot of money. But when we're talking about Fury and Usyk only a few months ago, and that's kind of fell apart, to be Fury and Ngannou, you know, for me personally, it's a bit disappointing. But it's going to be a show. It's not going to be competitive. Be really uncompetitive. Actually, I think it's going to be, you know, if Fury wanted, it could be a one-round fight. Genuinely believe that. And that's not me being harsh on Francis Ngannou. It's just a different sport. If it was in the octagon, then, you know, Ngannou wraps Fury up in, you know, a minute or something, and the fight's over. So it's two different worlds, and I'll be watching. I'll be interested to see what sort of performance that Ngannou can put in, but I'm not confident that he does anything in this fight.
A lot of obviously MMA fans will try and draw some form of comparisons to when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather again. We saw how that ended. Does that side of the MMA world have reason to be confident, or is it as simple as it's just two different sports? Don't get your hopes up.
Two different sports, and people get involved in the hype and they start to listen to people. And if you listen to someone saying something enough, you'll start to believe them. But I mean, even the Mayweather-McGregor stuff. McGregor had a bit of boxing experience. I think he had maybe 50 or 60 amateur fights. But going from his sport, never had a professional fight before, to fight, you know, one of the the greatest fighter probably of a generation anyway, one of the greatest of all time. People started to think that McGregor had a chance of winning that. I was at the fight as a fan. I wanted to go and enjoy myself in Las Vegas. I never for a second thought that McGregor could win the fight. Again, it's just a different sport. But if it's in the cage or somewhere else or an octagon, then McGregor busts him up. It's just the same. It's a similar case. People will make arguments for Francis Ngannou. I had a guy in the street talking to me the other day. You know, Ngannou, he's a cracker and he's big and he's strong. And I was like, he'd do well to hit Fury. I genuinely mean that. And they're going, nah, he's got a good chance. Like, you haven't a fucking clue. Like, people, I don't know, people get brainwashed easily. And, yeah, and they're all a bit daft.
We mentioned Anthony Joshua earlier on. He's got his rematch with Dillian-Whyte officially confirmed earlier this week. What do you expect from it? Are you excited? Are you not? What's your take?
No, I'm excited about this fight. I think it'll be a good fight. I think, again, like I said earlier, AJ's kind of stuck in the middle of a couple of styles, and at times he's trying to box, and people are saying he needs to be more aggressive. He knows what he has to do best. You know, it's not for me or anyone else to tell AJ what he has to do. But I think we'll see a bit more of the old AJ in this fight. I think there's enough needle between the two guys that it's not going to be AJ of the last couple of performances. But in saying that, Dillian-Whyte hasn't looked great either recently. But I think their styles will make for a really good, exciting fight. I think it'll be a good fight, and I'm genuinely really looking forward to it.
Let's move forward to a couple of weeks' time, Carl. Two big fights in 1 week. Let's start off with a man you know very well, Stephen Fulton, faces Inoue out in Japan. It's an unbelievable fight, Carl. Probably hasn't got the recognition it deserves because it falls in the same week as Spence-Crawford. But as we edge ever closer, does Stephen, somebody you know well, somebody you sparred, does he defeat the monster?
He has a chance. It's going to. I was over in Philadelphia a few months ago, and he was already up to sparring 8 rounds and stuff. Maybe like 10 weeks ago, probably. Stephen Fulton's someone who's very, very fit. He's got, in terms of his lung capacity and what he does on when we go out and runs and stuff, like he smoked everyone. When I sparred him, he was someone who I thought was kind of slick Philly boxer, hard to nail and hard to pin down. And some of the fights against Figueroa, was it? Yeah, some of the fights against Figueroa, there was a lot of like dog in him where he had to stand and fight and threw a lot of leather. I didn't know he had that in his locker, so he never even showed that to me on the night. I thought he was just an out-and-out boxer. So he can do a bit of both. I said that when Inoue fought Donaire, I says, I'm not just saying this because Donaire is my friend. Donaire has a real chance here, genuinely. And in the first fight, he put up a really good performance, and I meant that. I genuinely meant that, and people laughed at me. Stephen Fulton has more than a chance of winning this fight. He's going to be up against it, and being in Japan, everything else. I imagine he's getting extremely well paid, which he deserves as a unified champion. But he has a chance. He is a real live dog in this fight. He's beaten a number of undefeated fighters. If you look at the list of fighters and opponents that he's beaten throughout his career, he hasn't really ever had it easy. He has a chance, and I'm hoping he can pull it off. I genuinely hope he can. It's going to be difficult, but yeah, I hope that he can do the business.
Spence-Crawford, that fight on the weekend as well. It's been billed as a 50-50. It is a 50-50. Split opinion, divided that. Do you have a side of the fence which you're leaning towards? Yeah,
I do have a say. Well, what I will say, it's a historic fight. It's kind of one for the ages. It's, you go back to the Four Kings. You talk about Hagler, Duran, Hearns, and Ray Leonard, and that's the sort of fight that we're getting here. Unbelievable fight against two unbelievable fighters. Errol Spence is the bigger man in the fight. You got to remember that Terence Crawford's come up from lightweight. He won his first world title against Ricky Burns at lightweight. Now fighting at welterweight against a man who fought, I think he may have fought at middleweight as an amateur, or maybe once or twice, I'm not sure. Certainly a big welterweight anyway. Yeah, he's a big guy, but he's had a few issues outside the ring, car crashes, pretty bad ones. I love both guys. I think they're fantastic athletes and fighters. But I'm just edging towards Terence Crawford to find a way. I think Crawford's a bit of a genius, I think he's an unbelievable fighter. I'm saying that Errol Spence is too, but I think Crawford is extra special.
I've seen Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez exchange a few words over social media last night, Carl. If that fight was to be made, who do you think would have it in them to have their hand raised?
It's a good fight. It's a tough fight to call. I had Haney losing his last fight against Loma. Going into the Josh Taylor and Teofimo fight, I had Josh Taylor winning that fight, and it didn't play out how I expected. Lopez looked really, really good in that fight. And just going on their last performances, I would edge towards Lopez.
That's going to be my last question. You mentioned Josh Taylor there. Unsuccessful on the night against Teofimo Lopez. He's spoken about he wants to move up to 147. You'll know him as well as anybody. Do you think he can have success up there? Obviously, it's all dependent on how those titles lie beyond the end of this month when Spence-Crawford fight. But can he go and pick one of them up, or do you think differently now?
Well, look, the titles are maybe going to be tied up for quite a while. I imagine there's probably a rematch clause in the Crawford-Spence fight. So, you're a year away minimum from fighting for any sort of meaningful title at the weight above. It's clear that he's outgrown light welterweight, and I think he will have a lot of success at welterweight, but to get one of the top two guys, I think he's going to have to wait a while. Maybe a case of a Jack Catterall fight at welterweight, a rematch there. Josh may think that suits him a little bit more. I imagine Jack will take the fight at light welter or welter, whatever they want. But he can still do damage at that weight. He's an incredible fighter. Genuinely, like one of the best I've ever seen in the gym. Unbelievable. So there's big fights for him, but the real world titles I think are going to be tied up for the foreseeable future.
Right, Carl, I appreciate your time. Now I'm leaving you to obviously enjoy the rest of your day and your time here before you fly back home. So thank you for speaking to me, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, Andy. All the best, man.